Hello and welcome to this interesting episode of Open Book Entrepreneur. Today we have Nicole Lewis here with us, and Nicole is actually an interesting coach. She's a therapist as well, and she's actually focused on how the trauma affects the business through business owners. So, Nicole, please introduce yourself to our audience.
Hey, thanks for having me, Tony. My name's Nicole Lewis Keeber, and I'm a therapist and leadership coach. And I work with small business owners and entrepreneurs at the intersection of exploring how childhood trauma affects the entrepreneurial journey. And I was a therapist for 18 years before starting my business 10 years ago.
Great. Yeah. So can you tell us a little bit more about, like, obviously from experience with working with clients, how is our trauma affecting our business?
Yeah, so I've worked with a lot of entrepreneurs over the past 10 years, and what has been true about every single one of them, small business owners, founders, is that there is some experience that they've had in their younger years, like those very important formative years where they felt unsafe, unseen, unheard, maybe. And it created like a seed of a desire to either rebel, prove something to someone, a desire to be in control, to feel safe. And we can often pinpoint that experience that created the desire to be the one in control. And that can sometimes lead to an entrepreneurial journey or to open your own business because you don't want to be an employee for someone else. And how that can play out in your business is it can impact your ability to trust yourself, your ability to trust your team members, um, your money, the relationship that you have with your money, and really, honestly, the relationship you have with your business. Because if you had experiences in your childhood that were relational, emotional wounds, it can play out in your business and the relationship that you build with it. That's what happened to me 2 years into my business, and I recognized that I was creating a really hard relationship with my own business. And yeah, so there's a lot of ways that it can show up, but it usually kind of we can usually pinpoint that there was some experience that created that impetus for that journey.
So, okay, let's just maybe check specific examples. Yeah, let's say if, someone is a business owner, a small business owner, and is expecting a call with a potential client, and for example, potential client doesn't show up or something else happens, and then this business owner actually feels pain, or feels really stressed about it or something else. Is that maybe connected to the trauma, or is that, or if you can give us maybe some other
Yeah.
examples, because this is very.
That's a good example. Yeah, it could be. Sometimes it's just because you need, to make some money. And it could be disappointment. And a lot of times it can be a feeling of abandonment or some experience that you had when you were younger where you felt like you weren't picked. Maybe you weren't picked by your friends in the schoolyard, or maybe you got bullied by some of the kids in your school who, had more privilege or more power than you did. And it is very easy for that client not to show up and for those feelings of not enoughness to come back up. And we always joke in my world of, founders and entrepreneurs is that when you launch something and people don't show up, it can feel like you threw a party and no one showed up, and it can be really it can be really devastating. So yeah, it can bring up a lot of insecurity and a lot of trust issues.
Totally. And what are some other examples how people can actually recognize that this is related to childhood trauma?
Yeah. So I think the first thing is that a lot of people don't realize that they had experiences when they were younger or even young adult that would meet that criteria of being traumatic, because I think we all have very different definitions of what that is and how it affects us. And I think the majority of people think that trauma is like what we call big T trauma. They're like big events, kind of, more explosive in that they change everything automatically and in a moment, in an instant. But there's also something called little T trauma, which are these cumulative experiences that you have where you feel unsafe, unseen, and heard. And it can look like moving around a lot. It can look like maybe your family had some Maybe you had a parent who was ill, and so you had to take care of them at a very young age. Or like me, you had a learning disability through your entire school career, and it made you feel like you just weren't smart, not good enough. Those experiences, those little T traumas can also impact you. And I always say that big T trauma explodes and small T trauma erodes, but they are both strong enough to move a mountain. And so I think awareness about the fact that you had these experiences where you felt unseen, unsafe, unheard, that those actually do play out in your business, and it can play out in ways that you're not aware of. So I always tell people, if you're seeing a pattern of behavior and a pattern of emotion that's coming up in your business over and over and over, regardless of how successful you are, because you can be super successful and still not believe it because you have this childhood wounding. So if you're seeing this pattern come up over and over, and you're like, why do I feel this way? Why does this keep happening? That could be an indicator that there's something underneath the surface working.
Yeah. So, for example, let's say if someone is thinking they're not good speaker, let's say,
Mhm.
yeah, and they have a lot of people around them, not necessarily around them, but like in general in business, who are telling them, "Wow, you're a good speaker. You know, you should speak more," and things like that. Is that maybe related to trauma?
It could be. It could
Hmm.
be. If people around you are telling you that you have a skill set, like speaking, and you don't believe it, it's not landing in your confidence, that could be a gap between how you see yourself and how others see you. That could be connected to some experience where you had people, maybe you had a teacher who told you, you didn't speak well, or that you didn't do something good enough, or maybe even you had a critical caregiver or parent, like an authority figure in your life who told you you're not good enough, it's not good enough, do more, do better. It's really difficult to kind of download that feeling of confidence when you've had those experiences, in those very important formative years. So that's a really good example of where trauma could be playing out in your sense of yourself, that you can't take in the people's experience of you, because it's a lack of trust in yourself and a lack of trust in those people that what they are saying is true. So it's a trust issue.
Exactly. Okay, and then on top of that, like, what's the client journey for you when someone comes to you with this kind of challenges or issues? How long does it take usually for you to find out what are the issues and work on those?
So we can find out pretty quickly, but I do work with people for about 6 months at a time to really dig in. But what we do initially is we do like an assessment, a trauma and entrepreneurship assessment, where we start to look at the different categories of how trauma can show up in your business. And we do an energy audit where we look at their calendar, like what are the behaviors, what are the things on your calendar that are giving you energy and what are depleting your energy. And we start to kind of look at, well, why? Why is that? What's going on there? And so we get started there and we start working on what I call an emotional sustainability plan, because business plans are important, marketing plans are important, sales planning, all those things are important. But if you don't have an emotional sustainability plan underneath that, running to support you in the up and down of the entrepreneurial journey, it can be really complicated and it can have a lot of implications. And so that's where we start to dig in right away, pretty early. And because was a therapist, we can go deep. I do a lot of therapeutic coaching, and I even use some skills like bilateral stimulation, which we would call EMDR here, to support that entrepreneur from not just understanding it, but kind of like starting to heal and integrate that experience too.
Wow, sounds fantastic. So, and definitely like your analogy of up and down in the entrepreneurial journey. I usually call it
You
like the
know.
roller coaster that we as entrepreneurs go through this on a regular basis and emotionally, and also with everything that is happening in the business and environment, economy, and things like that. So, in general, what's the actual result of the transformation when someone actually works with you and you help them with these things? I love your example, how you actually describe this of going to the calendar and seeing what things bring what things give you energy, what things like sort of take energy. So, but when you finish working with your clients, or when they go to the breakthroughs or transformations, what's on the other side?
Yeah. I think they know themselves so much better. And what they do is they recognize that they can build a business that supports them as opposed to makes them feel insecure and challenged all the time. And they can build it. I wrote a book called How to Love Your Business, and a lot of the stuff that we talk about in there is about how to build a relationship with your business so you feel like it loves you back, that you're not just pouring all this energy into the business and that it doesn't love you in return. It's just, beating you up and it's never enough. And so what I would say is that, they've learned to build an intentional relationship with their business, whether it is improving trust in themselves where they can make decisions faster, or trust in their employees so that they can delegate and give them ownership of things as opposed to delegation and then taking it back. They actually get the relief of the delegation to somebody else as opposed to staying kind of in the mix, and kind of micromanaging them. And just from a very practical standpoint, they really understand what depletes them and what gives them energy, and they start to design their calendar and their week from a place of understanding that, stacking things that are, depleting with activities that are energizing. For me, speaking in public is very depleting, and so you better bet I'm not doing any other depleting activities at least 2 days, after that. So it's really about acceptance and learning who you are and how you operate within your business and building a business that supports you, whatever that is for you. It can be very, very different for each person, and to be honest, I have worked with some people who have realized that they have created a business to make their father happy, not the business that they want, and they ended up shutting their business down and starting up something new. So the transformation can be that you close up shop and you do something else.
Yeah, yeah, fair enough. Okay, and if someone wants to actually get in touch with you, learn more about you, connect to you, how they can do that?
Yeah, so I would love for them to follow me on if they're on TikTok. I'm the business therapist on TikTok. LinkedIn, it's Nicole Lewis Keeber, and my website is nicole.lewis-keeber.com.
Okay, great. I can definitely share the links that Nicole just mentioned in the description of this video. So if you want to check them out, you can check them out there. If you have any questions for Nicole or me, you can ask them in the comments as well of this episode. If you like the episode, drop us a like, subscribe, and yeah, Nicole, thank you so much for being a guest, for sharing your tips, knowledge, and your story. And everyone watching us, like, see you in the next episode. All the best, and bye bye.
Thanks.